is our history. Buildings and people and memories and dreams. Who better to tell us than those who were there? There's so much to learn from the stories they'll share.
Living history. Living history.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Living History with Ted Goldsborough. Today's guests are Caryn McTighe Musil, a class of 68 at Lower Merion?
66.
66 at Lower Merion. And Dr. Bob Jordan, same class. And we all went to Narberth School. So today's program is going to be about Narberth School. And if we have time, a little bit about Narberth and how Narberth affected our being at Narberth School. Welcome and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Ted.
Both of them are from out of town. Caryn lives in Bethesda, works in Washington, D.C., and Bob lives in Shreveport, Louisiana. And both of them have Ph.D.s, that's why the doctor. And we'll start with trying to place where Narberth School was to orient people. Our first image is of an atlas that was dated from 1881. It shows what was called Old Lancaster Road at that time. Today we know it as Montgomery Avenue. And Edward Price owned the land where Narberth School's going to be in the corner here. You can see that there are some streets already in 1881. The Price family owned most of the land of Narberth, so they developed it. Our next atlas page is 1896, and we have Narberth School placed on North Essex Avenue and Sabine, and it's one building. The building was built by the Lower Merion School District in 1892, but in 1895, Narberth became a separate borough, not part of Lower Merion. And Narberth bought the building that the Lower Merion School District had built. And then in 1917, and eventually I'll get over to you two, I'm doing most of the talking at the moment. In 1917, Narberth School added a second building. This shows the auditorium, which was off, and it was nice. It was a level, you didn't have to go up and down steps if you drove in there. If you brought grandma to a ceremony, you just went right into the auditorium. There was a sloping, so you get pretty good visibility no matter where you sat in the auditorium. I've often wondered how many people could, maybe 200, I don't know how many people could fit. I don't know whether the whole school could fit in that auditorium or not. And then this became grades 4 through 8 when I was a kid. And the other building, the 1917 building, was grades kindergarten through 3. Is that about what it was when you were?
With the 7th and 8th graders on the second floor. So you moved up.
Okay.
So to your entitlement.
Got some status.
That's
up there. Yeah. And you can see the playground. Of course, when you go up there today, it doesn't look that big, but it was the whole piece of property, I guess, was almost 3 acres. There was a chain link fence and an embankment down to Montgomery Avenue. I don't recall throwing footballs or baseballs over that fence down to Montgomery Avenue. I don't recall. And we did play football in there, but I don't recall where the goalposts were on Narberth Playground. I don't recall if we played other teams there or we went to their schools. One time we went over to Germantown on Germantown Avenue. I don't know what that Germantown Academy or something. Right. Now you said you played baseball.
I have a vague recollection of playing outfield, but I wasn't very good at it because I couldn't see.
But is this at Narberth School? To Narberth?
Narberth had a playground, so that was we played other schools occasionally. at least in the yearbook,
Okay.
it tells we lost. Oh, no, actually, we did well in baseball, kept losing in basketball because of the problem of height.
Okay.
But that was and the girls played softball on that same field.
Okay.
But we didn't play intercollegiate with softball. The boys played and it's like 2 or 3 a season. It was a season of 2 or something.
Not a big, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and when we're thinking of the field in the snow, I wanted to mention that one time, I think we tried it twice, the second time didn't work, but one time it worked, where the gym teacher, Mr. Wetherell, and we'll have a picture of him pretty soon, had us push the snow to make an edge. And then I believe the custodian, but maybe it was Mr. Wetherall, used the fire hose and he squirted out a window in the primary building, and it was in that corner, and he made an ice rink. And this is before satellite weather. I mean, it was just based on luck that you were going to have a cold snap, like in January, and it worked for about 3 or 4 days. It looked like people were ice skating on the grass and it worked. It was a pretty smooth surface. But then the next year he tried it again, and that night it went up to like 45. It was all mushy and it didn't work. But that was fun.
And that says something about the creativity of the teachers, and that they just would invent something and try to do something that they hadn't done before. And I think we saw that again and again in our experience.
Did you mention a circus?
There was a circus.
Yeah.
There was a
remember
circus
that
out on
too.
the playground. Yeah.
On the Narberth playground.
It came to town. It marched through town, elephants and all.
Yeah.
And was, of course, wide-eyed for. We were young then. I think, maybe
3rd or 4th grade.
Yeah, something like that. And I think it did it at least a couple years in a row.
Okay.
So it was a big event, and that's the other thing about Narberth. It was one of the spaces that the whole town shared, not just the kids that went to the school. So the circus is one example of that, for sure.
That taught me, as a later bicyclist riding in the street, and people would yell at you, "Get off the street, ride on the sidewalk."
Yeah.
Well, it taught me, wait a minute, elephants and lions,
That's right.
they can walk in the street, can't bicyclists?
I rode on the street
Yeah, me too.
on my big, heavy Raleigh.
Okay. All right. Now we've seen where it was, and what did it look like? Well, I think my orient is this where the auditorium was, down on this end towards Essex?
Underneath, coming in from the back.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is the building that was built in 1892 by the Lower Merion School District, with Narberth purchased in 1895. And the entrance, which we have another shot of, is here. And a woman who was in the Narberth class of 1917, when we had our centennial in 1995, she said, "My class gave the money to build those stairs."
Oh, my.
And lo and behold, on the stairs, and I don't have a picture of that, a good picture, but there's a plaque that says class of 1917. And sometimes we'll have a faculty picture later. Sometimes we did have our pictures taken on those stairs.
Right.
I remember that, we weren't allowed in the building until the bell rang.
Yes, definitely.
And where did you stand, waiting?
I believe we were in the playground. I mean, on the
side?
Yes, the concrete,
Out back, macadam?
Yes, the macadam.
Okay, where the bicycle shed
yes,
was.
right.
Okay.
Right.
Well, some of us, 5 or 10 of us, were standing out front one day, and an Oldsmobile pulled up, and a young guy got out, and he had a brown leather briefcase, and he came kind of jauntily up the stairs, and that was the first day of Mr. Micah, who became a science teacher at Narberth for about 3 or 4 years. And this was his first teaching job. He had been in the war, and during the war he was a medic, and he lost his right arm. So he had a hook, a metal hook, a chrome hook on there, but he didn't want us to see that. I guess he'd been told, don't frighten the children. So he kept that tucked into his suit jacket. But when he got up the door, he couldn't open the door because he had his briefcase in one hand. He didn't want to. So, of course, I opened the door for him. But I'll never forget, it's just that one little image of this car pulling up, this guy getting out. and then he became a much beloved teacher. He went up to Ardmore Junior High School for a few years, and then he began teaching overseas, independent schools. And he's still alive. He lives down in San Antonio, Texas. We email back and forth.
Oh, that's nice.
All right. Now the other building, sort of, I mean, if you didn't pay attention, sort of looked like the two buildings were similar in that they were stone, and they each had that kind of sandstone entrance. But this is where we had our class pictures taken, and we're going to show some of those class pictures. So this was the K through 3
K through
building.
3.
Yeah, Miss Dell. I don't know who you had for 3rd grade.
I don't remember.
Well,
Miss
first
Dell.
grade I had Miss Levis, who brought her dog, Flash, who was a Cocker Spaniel, and you weren't otherwise allowed to have pets, but all the children loved that she could bring her dog.
And I had Miss Forrester in the 1st grade. I was in a different section.
Okay.
We had 2 sections.
Yes, that's good. 1-1 and 1-2.
Yes, that's correct.
2-1 and 2-2.
For
Okay.
all 36 people.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Small classes.
Yes, right.
Yeah, they wouldn't do that these days.
36 is the natural now.
This is kind of an afterthought to put this in. I did it yesterday, but the reason I put it in was not so much the girls who were in my class, but to show the bike shed.
The bike shed,
When one of us,
absolutely.
when we'd ride a bike. So this is the primary building and then the secondary building.
Now, one thing that's interesting about this, I think
The gym.
the gym was down there.
That is correct.
And these windows were kind of, as I recall, from my perspective as a child, high up
Yes.
on the wall.
Yes, that's right.
And I remember throwing a baseball or something and breaking a window in the gym windows. And Mr.
Wetherell.
I was afraid of going to Mr. Roddy and making a confession that I had broken.
Bob, we're going to take a break, but we'll be right back. I'm sorry.
Oh gosh, well I guess the listeners will
We'll
be
be right back. Oh, hanging, right.
wanting
Thank
to hear
you.
the rest.
Thank you. This is Ted Goldsworth, Living History, and we'll be right back with Caryn and Bob.